well with you and yours. Today I'm joined by my good sister, Christine Anglin. Christine, how are you today?
Hello, hello. I'm happy to be here. Excited.
Good indeed, good indeed. So I'm so excited to talk with you today because I really want to share with the world like your work and your brilliance over the years. Like, talk to us a bit about that specific moment or story that like sparked your passion to like be creative and to talk about singleness as something that was worth amplifying and honoring through storytelling.
Right. Uh, Thank you for having me.
Of course.
So, to give folks a little bit of context, Come Tell a Story is a quarterly storytelling series that is ran by Single Life Ministries, affectionately known as Slim. And interestingly enough, the storytelling series launched before we were incorporated. So, there wasn't a specific moment, but I would say um, I lived in Phoenix, Arizona from 2019 to 2020. And we all know what happened in 2020. We don't have to get into it. But during that year, I launched a digital storytelling series. You actually were a storyteller
Yep.
on that storytelling series. And during that time, that year that I was curating and directing that particular series, I learned that I had the skills to produce a storytelling series and that I liked it. While living in Phoenix, I joined a church. And it was really my experience as a single at that church that was unsettling to me. I
Mm-hmm.
was one of, if not the only single women in my age group.
Mm-hmm.
And I was asked a lot of questions about that. Why are you still single? What's going on with you? When are you getting married? And after a while, it really started to bother me. Like, is everything okay with me being single here? And,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, there's a lot going on in my life other than the fact that I'm single. And there are many other things that I want to do with my life other than be married. And don't get me wrong, marriage is a beautiful thing. And so is being single.
Right, right.
So, um, fast forward a bit, I end up moving to Memphis, Tennessee
Mm-hmm.
for a job. And I go from being or feeling rather minoritized and lonely in Phoenix
Yeah.
to empowered and resolute. Like I just wasn't dealing with it. And I found myself just feeling really frustrated. And so, what do you do when you're really frustrated? You make a phone call. So I got on the phone with like a few people. I just had a few conversations with people where I was just really bemoaning the
Mm-hmm.
treatment that I felt I had received as a single woman.
Yeah.
And each time the person just listened really quietly, almost too quietly. And after I finished saying what I was saying, they said, "This sounds like something you're really passionate about. You
Mm-hmm.
should do something about it."
Mm-hmm.
Like each person like said the same thing. One person actually was just like, "If that's what you want, it sounds like it's something you're going to have to build yourself."
Ooh, yeah, yeah.
So, by like the third time of me hearing this, I was like, "Okay, God, I get it." And I just channeled all that frustration into laying the groundwork for what ended up being Come Tell a Story,
I
which
got
was
you.
born March of 2023. So um, it was really just, yeah, it was just really that the experience that I had received as a single woman and feeling like nothing else that I was doing, right? And that my person had no value
Mm-hmm.
because I was unpartnered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you experience people not even being able to see you as much as they saw what category you fit in. Like that was it.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you think that's about? Like what are some of the like assumptions you think they were making or assumptions about singleness in general that you've encountered?
Assumptions. So, a number of assumptions. So, the one that comes to mind is that all single people want to be married, right? Because
Right.
that's the number one question that I was asked.
Right.
It's like, what's going on with you? Um, all single people don't want to be married.
No.
Paul talks about this in First Corinthians 7 and Jesus in Matthew 19
Mm-hmm.
that some people are called to a life of singleness and it's a
Right.
good life. So, don't assume that because someone is single, they're searching or even waiting, right, for romantic love to come
Yeah.
along. Another assumption is that because I'm single, I'm lonely,
Mm-hmm.
right? This has been researched. The antidote for loneliness is not necessarily marriage, it's community,
Right.
right? So you need to be in community if you're feeling lonely, and not just any community, but meaningful, good community.
Absolutely.
Um, that singles are incomplete. You're not
Mm.
walking around half a person as a single person, right?
Right.
Singles are complete under God. God doesn't do his children like that.
Come on.
Um, Another harmful myth is that a single person is unloved.
Right.
You're not unloved as a single person.
No
The
doubt.
greatest love story is when a man named Jesus came, lived, died, and rose again on the third day for his
Mm-hmm.
children. You are deeply loved by
Right.
God. Um, you also have self love. You have the love of your friends, your
No doubt.
family, and your community. So you have love as a single person. Another would be that you're not chosen.
Mm.
I think this is big for women.
Yeah, yeah.
As a woman, you know, there's definitely something beautiful about a man choosing you to spend, like for you guys to spend your life together.
Yeah.
But the first man who chose you, right, was God the Father. It
Come
tells us that
on.
in Ephesians. In love, he chose us before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight. And you are chosen
Yeah.
as a single person. I think that there's like this like idea that as a single you're like in this isolated situation
Yeah.
waiting for something. You're like in what is it, like cryo sleep or something like that. You're
Yeah.
waiting for like
This,
a prince or something to come and
that's
wake
right.
you up so that you can start living your life
Straight
and
up.
doing stuff. No, that's not true. It's not
Nah.
true at all. God is always working.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. I can't help but think about the way all of this is extremely gendered to your earlier point. Like I think not that I think that is necessarily easier to be a single man, but I because I think there's a lot of pressures there and a lot of that like what's wrong with you, the same sort of treatment that you were describing. I can see single men receiving, but it just seems especially gendered in terms of like what you were saying about like being incomplete and the
Yeah.
expectations and social expectations. So,
Yeah.
how have you seen the way that social location, especially like race, gender, and faith, intersect with these sorts of assumptions we discussed in your own experience and stories?
Yeah. So one of the things about being Christian specifically at church, right? And that's
Yeah.
where my work is really targeted towards single Christians,
Mm-hmm.
is that single Christians have quite frankly been neglected by the church.
For real.
Um, in many spaces, there is an inordinate amount of pressure to get married, and marriage is sort of seen as like a marker of spiritual maturity, and in
Yeah.
some cases, it's a qualification for leadership. So
Right.
if you're unmarried, like you can't really participate in a leadership capacity until you know
Right.
you kind of get over this hump.
Mm-hmm.
um and that one is not biblical, right?
No.
But I would say that men, women, black, white, Baptist, Lutheran, non-denominational, north, south, east, and west,
Mm-hmm.
they just feel like their stories are not valued, right?
Yeah.
As your single status, your single story holds no value here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think we have to be really frank about this. Neglect is a form of abuse.
Say that
Neglect is a
again.
form of abuse. If
Yes.
you have three children, for example, like you have two boys and a girl,
Yeah.
and you pour all of your love and devotion and nurturing into the two boys.
Right.
And of course, the girl is housed and fed and like she's got a place to sleep.
For
But
sure.
when she brings her problems to you, you tell her to pray about it or
Come
to
on.
cling to Jesus.
Come on.
Uh, are you not mistreating her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And mistreating her in the face of you pouring love and devotion into people
Right.
who are like men and
Mm-hmm.
not women, or you know what I mean, like
I get
you're
you.
not you're not treating your children equally.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that this is one of the reasons that storytelling is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the reasons that I think that amplifying single stories, Christian single stories in particular, is very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you talked about neglect being a form of abuse because I definitely think because people don't like within a church context because
Hmm.
people don't know what to do with it, they just leave it alone. There's like
Which is odd because everybody was single before they got married.
every like you this is not like some sort of condition. Like everybody is born single. You know what I'm
Are
saying?
they?
Don't you think?
I thought we were. I was. I
Me too.
was definitely
Me
born
too.
single. Okay. I didn't know. Sometimes you're not
You
sure.
know, I just trying to kind of ran through like a mental rolodex of every culture. I was like, I don't think they're doing like arranged marriages before the kids are born. I don't know, but assuming everybody has been single at some point, and it's really everything you've been saying, Christine, has made me think about all of the sort of like um ministries at churches I've visited or been a part of that talked about like, oh, we're gonna have like singles night, and maybe it's like, but it becomes like the church trying to be a matchmaker. It don't have anything to do with what you're talking about in terms of building community. It's like, go find you a man, or like, fellas, lots of ladies in this church, fellas, lots of ladies in this church, right? So like completely through that lens and no sense of what does it mean, to your point, to build a life, that like being married ain't the only way to be loved, because the truth is there's a lot of loveless marriages. If the church is holding up marriage as this sort of like prize or mantle of some sort, but not teaching folks how to like have that sort of like love for self that God allows you to have, then we having a lot of broken people that's moving through the world, but they think they're okay because they're married. And that's the other side of that coin that I think people don't necessarily want to explore, is like, if you make marriage a prize, you're setting people up for disaster.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, even if you just think about it strategically,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't think it makes sense to wait until someone gets married to then start teaching them communication and boundaries and
No.
like how to be a good person.
Right.
You
Right.
probably want to start looking at them as an individual and make sure that they understand how to balance a budget and how to,
Totally.
make their own doctor's appointments and how to just be a
Totally.
good part of the community, whatever
Yes.
community that they're in, so
Yes.
that when they do meet this person that God has for them, um, they're already a decent,
Yeah.
well-adjusted human being.
Right.
If that's your goal. But I mean, bringing it back to the scriptures, you know, God is doing work in all the lives of his children
No doubt.
at all times.
No doubt.
And the work that he's doing isn't just about molding you and getting you prepared for marriage.
Mm-hmm.
He's sanctifying you,
Right. Right.
right? He's molding you into the image of his son. That's what this
Mm-hmm.
is about, Christ likeness.
Right.
So, you know, we need to be caring for people right where God has them because God has them right where he wants them.
Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something about being able to see people as people rather than I think churches, as like sort of a ancillary point to what you're saying, churches have a bad habit of turning people into projects, and just like, while I do rock with the metaphor of like the church is not a museum, it's a hospital.
Yeah.
I think a lot of churches kind of have. You ever walked into like an auto shop and you see all them cars, like some lifted up, some just there. There's a little bit of that going on too. Like, oh, I'm gonna fix Sister Jones's carburetor in a minute. Brother Smith, we got to change his tires, rotate his tires. I think there's a bit of that happening too. So you don't get
Mm-hmm.
to see a person as a whole human being carrying the image of God. They just become projects. Like, oh, that's
Yeah.
the one who's fighting cancer, or that's the one who
Yeah.
struggling with fidelity. That's the one, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's good.
yeah, for sure. How are you seeing this along generational lines? Because I think the way, like, millennials, Gen Xers, Gen Z, and especially boomers how they see this, very different expectations around marriage.
Oh yeah.
Very different very different expectations around what it means to be a single person.
Yes. Yes. So this is really good because this is probably why we're dealing with some of the things that we're dealing with in the church. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, to answer the short answer to the question is that there are some major differences in the way these are being seen. So, boomers, I believe that's 46 to 64,
Mm-hmm.
and millennials are like, I'm a millennial,
Yeah,
but then
me
there's
too.
like early and late. So, I think it's like 81 to something or other.
Yeah, like to 93 or something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Gen Zers, their last year is like 2012 or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, boomers, um, singleness carried a negative, overwhelmingly negative connotation in the boomer generation. And in some cases, you were sort of seen as defective
Mm-hmm.
if you weren't married. Like, why
Mm-hmm.
isn't anyone marrying you? Okay.
Right.
Millennials, we started to release some of that stigma and
For sure.
question these traditional pathways. Of course, there are people who are happily married, but there are also those who are happily single,
Yeah.
understanding that there's more than one way to do this thing called life.
Mm-hmm.
Gen Zers, they burst the door wide open. They
Yeah.
don't see anything wrong as being single.
No.
And studies have shown that they value their autonomy
Mm-hmm.
over relationship.
Yeah.
And because they don't see anything wrong with being single, they don't judge themselves or their peers on their romantic relationship status.
Right, right.
When we zoom in on the church, things get a little bit more complicated. So the church is led, traditional evangelical spaces are largely led by boomers
Yeah.
and Gen Xers.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of lag in terms of understanding and even some acknowledgement that the vast majority of your congregation is actually probably single.
Yes.
And if they're not single, then you're missing out on half the population
Right.
because the Census Bureau is saying that about 46% of the population is
Yeah.
single. Okay. But the church is still subtly and overtly pushing marriage
Mm-hmm.
as the path. This is the
Mm-hmm.
way to go, and it's hurting singles in the church are silently suffering. A lot of them
Yeah.
because that's what they have been taught to do. Um, Gen Zers not so much because they value their voice and they're going to say
Absolutely.
something about it.
Absolutely.
But I've heard some interesting stories here about singles asking for more engagement from the church and being turned away. So there's one guy, he was a part of a church. Um, Lots going on because churches have all kinds of stuff going on. They got Wednesday, they got Tuesday, they got the
Every
kids.
day.
They got you can be at the church every night if you want
You
to,
really could.
okay? Or at somebody's house.
Somewhere.
And he was a single man. There was a lot for couples, right? A
Mm-hmm.
lot of churches, like even the church experience that I had, there was a lot going on, but it was very couples and nuclear family focused.
Mm-hmm.
So he asked, he was like, "Hey, can like we get something for the singles?" He was told, "If you want some engagement, you need to get married." Yeah, I kind of paused when I heard that story. Another lady at a church, same thing. Hey, like, can we get something for the singles? Just get connected with the stuff we already have.
Get connected with the stuff we
Get the
already have.
mm-hmm. Uh, I I at a church that I was going to a little while ago, sizable church,
Right.
few thousand members,
Right.
uh, very large building.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
resources during because churches have like the orientation.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah.
When you're like trying to become a member.
Right.
I asked, you know, what do you have for your single congregants? How are you caring for them?
Mm-hmm.
He said, we've been looking into more um, engagement since our singles population is growing.
Right.
Translation: we don't have anything for you right now.
Nothing. Yeah, yeah, nothing. That is astounding on a couple of levels because, like, one, it's almost like especially with the brother you described not getting like basically being told like just enjoy what we already have. I think about that almost like you're viewing church as a restaurant menu, and you're like, this is what's on the menu. You can eat here or you can eat somewhere else. And I think so much more of what a healthy church represents is a place that is dynamic, not static, a place that's responding to the need of its congregants rather than just saying this is what we do and just being satisfied with that. I think a church, because the spirit is dynamic, the spirit is always moving us and molding us and changing us. For a church to just say like, no, this is what we do, we have calcified ourselves, is so harmful for everyone involved.
Yeah. So here's what I'll add to that, right?
Mm.
I would bet 8 to 10, I'll say 8 to 10 instead of 9 to 10,
Yeah, yeah.
that if a married person would have asked for some engagement because they were having some issues with their marriage or something like that,
Come on. Yeah, yeah,
okay, they would have figured something out.
yeah.
They would
For
have said,
real,
hey,
though.
we have a curriculum. We actually have this couple, Deacon so and his wife. They help our couples who are okay.
Yeah,
There would have been something. They
yeah,
would have had a class. They would have had something.
yeah.
Hmm.
You saying that made me think about something that's a cold, hard fact. I'm wondering how many churches view this through the lens of most likely to give. Like I'd
Of what?
imagine of most likely to give. Like I'm wondering
Hmm.
if there's some data out there. This is really just me wondering on the spot. So I'm not saying this is, you know, definitively what it is. I'm wondering if
Hmm.
there's some data that shows that married couples give more often and more financially, and so that makes it worth their while as the institution to invest in those couples, make sure that they stay around, rather than single people may not have the sort of income to give at the rate of married couples, or may not give as often as married couples. I'm wondering how much that plays a part in it. Not and Lord knows that doesn't make it right, but I'm wondering if that's what the lens that's being employed. You know?
I had not thought of it through the lens of giving.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. And I don't like I said, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just wondering, especially based on what you just lifted up, because I think you're absolutely right. I think, and I'll say in my own experience, just as a minister and as someone who's guest preached at probably at this point dozens of places,
Yeah.
I have seen the excitement in churches' faces when I show up as a married person with kids. The churches are so excited. They almost are begging me to stay and like become their pastor or become a member. Like, don't please don't leave. Like that's pretty much the energy. And it's like, y'all, I'm not coming back. Like this has been lovely. I'm not coming back. And it just
Not I'm not
really
coming.
not coming back. It's like I don't wanna live in this state. I'm never gonna be here again. I love y'all. Y'all are great, but like it's not personal. And I really think that there's just so much of a premium that's placed on that, quote unquote nuclear family that, to your point, we are doing as a church a great disservice to ourselves and to single people. You know?
We're not only doing a disservice, we're not living in line with the text.
Really? Yeah.
We're not
Really?
sitting under the
Really?
authority of the text.
Nah, 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 nah.
I listen. I think you're way more educated than I am.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I don't
I think you're way more educated than I am.
know.
But when I read First Corinthians,
Right.
the entirety of that book, Paul is correcting some major wrongs going on in
They
the church.
wildin'. They're wildin' in
This
in
is the same
Corinth.
book where some man was sleeping with his father's wife. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
correct.
They was wildin'. They're wildin'. Right.
He was correcting all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, First Corinthians chapter 7, he basically says in so many ways over and over again, if you're single and you are able to keep it together,
Yeah, yeah.
stay single.
That's it.
Paul was single. The
Yeah,
most prolific writer of the New Testament was single.
yeah.
What's the
Like as
problem here?
like Paul, to the point that you're making, was like, I mean, if you're gonna burn up in the flesh, go ahead and get married. Like if you can't handle this, fine. Like I'll allow it. But I'd really prefer you not to get married. Like Paul really wasn't trying to have people out here talking about we engaged. He was not for that whatsoever.
And I mean, he tells you why. He says that he wants you to be free from concern,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
He says why. He says, I want you to be free from concern. The single man is concerned about the things of the Lord, how to please the Lord.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas the married man, his interests are divided.
for sure.
Now, I think it's really odd, okay? Really
Hmm.
odd that single Christians, by far and large, are not concerned with the things of the Lord. At least I wasn't for many years
Right.
of my single life.
Yeah, yeah.
The number one question that single people in the church have is, where is my spouse?
Yeah.
Now, what do you think we could accomplish for God's kingdom if we had an army, 46% of the population,
Hmm.
right, who were concerned about the things of the Lord? What do you think we
Yeah.
could accomplish?
Yeah.
Because as a single person, you have freedom to lean in to whatever it is that you want to lean into.
For sure.
Okay. So singles are busy. Don't think that single people aren't busy
No, of
because we don't
course.
have any children or a spouse. What we have is the freedom and the singleness that is afforded, that the freedom that is afforded us by our singleness,
Hmm.
which is a blessing.
Right.
So if you as a single person were primarily concerned about the things of the Lord, you and 10 other single friends, what could you accomplish?
Yeah.
What could you accomplish?
For real.
So I think it's weird that churches really want like only married people to be in leadership because I mean, I have friends with kids and the kids are really lovely. You know, I love the children,
Hmm.
but honestly, after children's church, come get your kids.
Oh, absolutely.
Come
Don't
get your
don't don't
kids.
delay. Don't
Don't
delay.
don't delay. You love the kids, but
No
you
doubt.
have the responsibility of raising a human being. That's a huge responsibility.
Right.
If you were single,
That's it.
you would have a lot more to give to whatever
Hmm.
the task is at, that's at hand,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
I think that makes a ton of sense. And just imagine, to your point, if churches were that creative and that imaginative, where we could, part of that, whether you want to call it onboarding or orientation to the church, we're like, hey, what are you good at? Offer that as a service to the community. We can help you facilitate that. Oh, you like to knit? Cool. We'll teach a knitting class. You know what I'm saying? Or you know how to change a tire? You go lead a workshop in that. Whatever it is. You know what I mean? I think that there's so much compartmentalization going on, which I do think is sort of like the subtext of the issue, the problem, is that I think the church has very rigid, static boxes it drops people in that, a person like you being single and not sad about it doesn't make sense to them.
No, studies actually show that a happy single person who chooses to be single makes people angry.
I believe it. I
Mhm,
believe it. That makes
mhm.
sense because it's breaking the matrix.
It's doing something. It's doing something. I'm like, I was a little shocked. I was shocked
Yeah.
and not shocked at the same time when I came across that. I was like, that makes some of these responses that I'm receiving make sense.
Yeah.
Because that's what like kind of like the data does in a lot of ways. It validates your experience.
Validation. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it also was just like I was like, I need to dig deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you angry?
Yeah.
You know?
I think people get upset when their values aren't being shared.
Hmm.
And so a lot, like, I think people in general, just in most situations, are really bad at sympathy and are, and
Hmm.
are, and are even worse at empathy.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of having the sort of empathy is like, oh, I heard about your diagnosis. I've gone through something similar like that. Here's how I can help you. We're very like presumptuous with and prescriptive about how you should feel. So taking it back to singleness, I'm going to assume you're very sad and upset with God because that's what I would be like, or that's how I was when I was single. I'm going to assume that you out here just, tearing the streets up because that's how I was when I was single, or that's what I would be doing if I were single. Like, I think people can't help but see themselves in everyone else. And so if you're saying, no, actually, I feel great. Like, I really enjoy my life. I wake up before my alarm clock. I'm so happy. They're like, it can't be.
This cannot be true.
This cannot be true. Lies. I don't think people have the capacity to say, oh, wow, this person is dealing with this situation differently than I would. I'm curious now. I don't think people have that curiosity. Generally speaking, it's
Mm.
broad strokes, but I think it
Mm-hmm,
applies.
mm.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I want to just add here that there are some churches that will put their single people to work,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
it's not really about advancing God's mission. It's about advancing the mission of the church.
yeah, yeah.
And they are working these people to death and not nurturing these people. So
That's it.
I just want to add that
That's
this
it.
is this is Paul's talking about concerned about the things of the Lord.
Right.
The Lord. We're talking about
Oh,
the
for
Lord.
sure.
Yeah.
Paul is talking like Jesus is coming back next Thursday.
Get
Paul
it
is like,
together.
listen, you say that job gonna pay me in 2 weeks? I'm not interested. Y'all need to pay me on Friday. Cause he coming back.
He's coming
He's coming. I'll over buy green bananas because he's coming back.
because he's coming. I might not
That's
have time.
I don't have time. I don't have time. Paul not watching movie trailers.
Mm-mm,
Paul not interested in none of that.
mm-mm.
He's like, we on the short time is of the essence. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, the book of First Corinthians. I was reading through that, and I was just like, "This is goofy."
Yeah, yeah. And it has this beautiful poem in the middle of it that gets read at a lot of weddings. You know what I mean? But the love that he's talking about isn't just confined to erotic or romantic love. That's not the core of it. It's really closer to agape, this unconditional love.
I mean, do you love like that? Love is patient, love is kindness. It doesn't envy, it doesn't boast, it isn't proud, it isn't rude, it isn't self-seeking, it isn't easily angered. Like I strive to love
Yeah, it's
people like that.
aspirational love. You know what I'm saying? That's aspirational.
I strive to love people like that. But the only person I know who has successfully done that
Come on.
is Jesus,
Come on.
God the Father. I
I'm
mean, I
telling
mean,
you.
I look to him.
Yeah.
I don't.
That's the,
Yeah,
I'll have several boxes checked on any given day, but all the boxes at
not
the
all the
same
boxes.
time, I fall short. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely,
Fall short.
definitely.
Fall short. As an aside, I officiated a wedding once where I read First Corinthians 13. It's a wedding for a great friend of mine from high school, and a bunch of high school friends were there. And one friend, tears in his eyes, just like tears of joy. Was like, "Yo, Chris, I didn't know you was that good a poet. I know you wrote poetry, but I didn't know you was that nice. So that's beautiful. It's beautiful." And I was like, "I appreciate you." First Corinthians 13, my guy. Like I'm nice. I think I'm a solid poet. I'm not that nice.
Not that good.
Not that nice.
I am good,
I'm
but
good.
not that good.
Not that good. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man.
Hilarious.
Oh, it's the best. It was the best. Talk to me about this lifestyle of singleness as abundance. Like, we've talked a lot about your faith, but what sort of spiritual or creative practice helps you shape this understanding of what it means to live singly and well?
Yeah. Okay. So at Single Life Ministries, Single Life
Mm.
Ministries, see Jesus's life as the blueprint for how to do the single life well.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, what did Jesus have? He had intimacy with the Father,
Yeah.
he had meaningful community, and he had a clear focus on the work that God had for him to do.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
So that is the model. Paul had that, and I strive to do exactly what Jesus did.
No doubt.
You have to have intimacy with the Father. I spend a lot of time in prayer. There's this verse in Mark that I aspire to, like Jesus rose up early in the morning to go to a solitary place and hear
Right.
his
Right.
Father pray. And we see this very deep intimacy with God and all of the people that he used greatly. Elijah, Paul, his son, right? We don't know what they talked about. I
Mhm.
think God is very private about those relationships. We don't really have much record of like what how they spoke to God. We just hear about the
Right.
revelation,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But we see Jesus getting up early. He's over here. Even in the Garden of Gethsemane, the disciples were here, and then he went in a little bit deeper to go by
Right.
himself to pray.
Right.
So I spend a lot of time in prayer. I talk to God about just about everything. He's my
Mhm.
best friend. I also read a lot of scripture,
Yeah.
right? So I'm a huge fan of Jackie Hill Perry, and one of the things that she was talking about was reading um, a book of the Bible in one sitting because it just gives you like
Mhm.
a
The
different
whole context.
right. You're seeing this because these were letters in the New Testament. A lot of
Yeah.
this stuff
Yeah.
was like they sat down. I'm assuming and they read all this stuff together, or even in the Old Testament, just reading a book over and over again, and it just gives you a different point of view,
For sure.
right? Versus if you were to go verse by verse, which is also very important. So I've been doing that, and I'm really liking it. I also sit under a lot of sermons from a lot of different
Got you.
pastors. I listen to
Got
a
you.
lot, like a lot of
Yeah. Yeah.
sermons,
Yeah.
um, and I laugh with my friends. I've got some good friends,
There it is.
and I've got friends all over.
There it
So
is.
because I've moved around a bit, so if we haven't connected in a while, because life gets busy,
Right.
um, I'll say, hey, we got to get some on the calendar soon.
Come
I'll just pick up the
on.
phone and make a phone call. And if I'm in the city that I know a friend lives in, even if the schedule is tight, we'll make time for breakfast or a dinner or something
Wonderful.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
The other thing is a clear focus on the work that God has for me to do. I was listening to uh, an interview of Toni Morrison, and she had gotten invited to like some prestigious dinner. I think it was like a Nobel Prize dinner. Like, don't catch me like saying this wrong, but it was
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
prestigious dinner. It was a very odd thing that she declined the invitation.
Oh.
She didn't go,
She ain't go.
and so it was the interviewer who had interviewed her,
Yeah.
or, excuse me, who had invited her, and he was just like, "You didn't come," and she was just like, "If it doesn't have anything to do with making me a better writer or a better mother, then I don't have time for it."
Ooh, priorities and
Okay, that's
boundaries.
focus.
Boundaries.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't have time.
Nah.
And you see the same thing in Jesus' life. I'd say she got it from him. Jesus, let me tell you something. If it didn't have anything to do with the work that his father had for him to do, he
Out of
wasn't
there.
there.
Out of there.
Same thing with me. If it doesn't have anything to do with the work that God has for me to do, I don't have time for it.
I respect it. I respect it. So what kind of spaces and conversations do you wish were more common for single folks? Like what kind of and not to say that like married people have to sort of take the lead on it. 'Cause I believe in people creating community for themselves and sustaining community for themselves. But
Yeah.
how can partnered or married people like support that sort of space and conversation uh, for single folks?
Okay. So I hear two questions. What conversations would I like to see for singles, and how can married support singles?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what I'd love to see more for singles in terms of conversation is more contextualization of the scriptures for singles.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So we talked about this a little bit. There are a lot of single people in the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Jeremiah was single. John the Baptist is believed to be single.
Right.
Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, three siblings, were
Yeah. Yeah.
are understood to be single. Joseph was single for a very large portion of his story. He
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
wasn't given into marriage until he entered Pharaoh's service.
Right.
Paul, famously, probably like the most famous single
That's
outside of
right.
Jesus,
That's right.
and the apostles. A number of the apostles is are understood to be single. I've
Hmm.
heard like that we don't know if they were married, and then some people are just like they were single.
Right.
Okay, I would love to hear more about how God used these people in their singleness, not in spite of their singleness, but through their singleness,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? In powerful ways. We hear a lot about Paul, and we know that Paul was single, and yet still there is a push for people to get married, even though we see how God used Paul in his singleness. Jeremiah, the same thing. Great prophet. He was there really trying to get these people to stop acting like they was crazy. And
Yeah.
they was just gonna keep doing what they were doing.
Yeah.
Okay. Why are we not talking more about that? That's what I'd like to hear more of.
Yeah. I hear that. I hear that. Jeremiah just has such a sad life. I don't know if that's a good. You know what I mean? Like I feel like
It was hard.
you can't put
You're
him on a
right.
brochure for this. You know what I mean? Like just it was really hard. It's a really
We're
hard
just
life.
talking about singleness.
I know you're
Just
right. You're right. You're right.
talking about
Let me stay on
singleness.
track. Let me
But
stay
you're
on track.
right. But Jeremiah, I felt really bad for him. Honestly,
Yeah.
all of them. I mean,
Yeah.
like
This
I
is
don't
true.
think
This is true.
I listen, if there's one thing you need to understand from the text is that when God has some work set aside for you to do,
Oh
you gonna go
man.
through it.
Yeah. Yeah. You going
Because
through it.
I mean, name a person who didn't go through it.
That's true.
Joseph was in jail. Paul was flogged constantly in jail.
Stated all the
Okay,
time.
they crucified Jesus.
Yeah.
You see what they did to Jeremiah? They weren't necessarily listening to Isaiah either.
No.
Okay,
No. This is true.
Daniel.
Yeah. Got to
Okay,
take him out a couple times.
I mean, in a lion's den,
Lions
that's
Den.
raggedy.
Truly.
They tried to burn these people to death.
Yes. Yeah.
If God has special work for you to do, married, single, children, no children, get ready.
Yeah.
He's gonna be with you though.
Oh, for sure.
He's gonna be with you. Moses, he went through it too. Everybody went through it.
Yeah.
No one didn't go through it.
That's true.
The second question is how can married people
Yeah. Support.
support singles? Okay, so Jesus said in John 13:34, I want to say, a new command I give to you that you love one another the way that
Hmm.
I have loved you.
Right.
Are we loving our single congregants, our single Christians, the way that Jesus loved?
Yeah.
Are we doing that? We can start by listening to them, right? There are
Hmm.
single people who are asking for things and they are being turned away.
Real.
Okay, so let's start by listening to them, showing genuine interest in their lives. How are you? How did that project at work go? Would you like to come over for dinner? And also understanding that singles are not a monolith.
Right.
Okay, no one, not women aren't a monolith. Black women aren't a monolith. Singles aren't a monolith, and that there's more than one kind of single person. So you have singles who have never been married.
Yeah.
That's me. You have singles who are divorced. You have singles who are widowed.
Come
You have
on.
singles with children. You have
Yeah.
singles without children.
Right.
Okay, in all of those categories,
Mm-hmm.
and all of them require specific forms of engagement.
No doubt.
The care
No
that you
doubt.
would give to a single without kids is going to be a little bit different from the care that you would give a single with kids. So the care for a single with kids is probably you saying, "Hey, can I take your kids for the
Mm-hmm.
day?" Okay. Care for a single who has no children is maybe going out for a cup of coffee or something like that. Would you
Mm-hmm.
like to come over for dinner? So you can help by being advocates. You can help by listening to understand,
That's it. That's it.
but you have to listen. You have to, I can't say that enough
Right.
because um, there are pastors who are mentioning singleness from the pulpit now. let me let me let me rephrase.
All good.
Singleness has always been mentioned from the pulpit, but it's typically always been framed as a season of waiting.
Yeah, yeah.
Now there's a bit more acknowledgement of the existence of singles in their congregation.
Right, right,
There are single people here.
right.
And then they'll say something like, you know, I've been married for this amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which is, I understand them understanding that they don't know much about it because they got married, maybe at a younger
At that
age or
time, right,
have been
right.
married for a very long time. But then they don't listen.
Mm,
They don't listen.
right.
You have to listen.
So well,
You
so
have
well.
to listen.
Truthfully. So where can folks listen or find your work and support you? Should share what you're doing?
So, okay, so you can find us on Instagram or Facebook at Come Tell a Story. You can also find us on our website at cometellastory.com, everything spelled correctly. If you heard anything I had to say and are like, hey, I'd love to talk about what the Lord has done in my life,
Yeah.
um, shoot us an email, come tell a story inquiry at gmail.com, or you can connect with us on the website. If you have heard what I'm doing and are familiar with an organization who is doing similar or adjacent work, shoot them over.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to connect with them. If you if this doesn't touch you because maybe you're in a different season, but you know someone that could benefit from this work, connect with them. And then you can always support us financially. Uh, you can hit the invest button on our website and you can donate there.
There it is. There it is. Friends, this has been a joy, a pleasure. Christine, thank you so much for your time as always.
Thank you for having me.
Friends, y'all could catch us at baddestchaplain.com, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, any and everywhere you get podcasts. Until next time, God bless y'all. Take care.